Whenever you're quitting an addiction or doing a dopamine detox, you're going to feel amazing for the first few days. And then the withdrawals happen, the flatline happens, and that's when it becomes harder to stick to. That's when you feel like dog shit and you just feel like quitting. That's when most people give up, and then they crash and burn, and then they restrict again, and that's when the whole yo-yo process starts. If you've heard the term yo-yo dieting, this is where it comes from. We're overly restrictive, and then we crash and burn because it's too hard to stick to. We go through the withdrawals and the flat lines and cut out everything all at once. And then we binge eat, then we go all the way backwards, and sometimes even worse than where we started. So this is the point when most people give up, but not you. In this video, I'm going to explain exactly what's going on when you hit this flat line and how you can make it to the other side. So dopamine is literally a drug, and we get addicted to it nowadays from a very young age. For me, as a kid, I was addicted to fast food. I was addicted to pornography. I was addicted to video games. All these forms of cheap dopamine, of easy dopamine, right? Of just easy pleasure. You don't have to do anything. You can just pull out your phone and look up a website. You can just eat the chocolate, eat the candy, especially now in Halloween season, holiday season, there's just sweets everywhere. Everyone's bringing them to work. Everyone's bringing them to school. You don't have to put in any work to get the pleasure that you receive from eating something sweet. Video games, you just turn on your PC, you just turn on your console, and you just start playing. You could play for hours. And you just sit there. You don't actually have to physically do anything. You're just getting all this easy pleasure. But this is not how our brains are naturally wired. Dopamine is a good thing inherently. Dopamine is supposed to be a reward for doing hard work. But now, because we're in this state of cheap dopamine, of easy access, of high stimulation with very little effort, we can't feel dopamine. We can't feel so much pleasure now from things like food, from sex, from socializing, from just getting work done, from accomplishing goals. These are all natural things. From exercise. These are all natural things that we're supposed to get dopamine from. We put in some hard work, or we put in work to accomplish something, and then our brains reward us with dopamine. Like, that was a good thing. That was a healthy thing. Let's do more of that. But nowadays we're too busy taking big doinks from all these hard hitters, the weed, the alcohol. Gambling is a big thing now. Just infinitely scrolling, infinitely consuming content, whether it's porn, whether it's social media, TikTok, whatever. So the key is to quit all of those hard hitters and resensitize yourself to real life. Resensitize your dopamine receptors by giving them time off, taking a dopamine detox, taking a break, taking a tolerance break, if you will. It might take a little time, and it might feel uncomfortable at first because you're so used to constantly being stimulated. You're not used to just stillness and quietness and being calm. You're so used to your nervous system always being on, always being in fight or flight mode. But over time, it becomes easier, and that healthy dopamine wiring, that becomes your new normal. That becomes what you're used to, because that's our natural state. That's actually our childlike state. Things felt so much better when we were kids because we weren't so overstimulated. We were experiencing everything new and fresh for the first time, and we were just fully present in the moment. So by getting rid of all these dopamine heavy hitters, we're able to resensitize our brains and our bodies and even our spirits back to the present moment, back to our natural childlike state. It takes a minute for your brain to actually catch up with your conscious awareness. Like, we know that we don't want all this excess dopamine. We don't want to be cracked out on dopamine all the time, just like fiending for it, like a crackhead, just like always scratching and stuff. We don't want to be, but it still takes a bit of time for your nervous system and your brain to actually catch up with that, right? It takes time for literally the physical cells of your brain to actually change and new neural pathways to be formed. So we have to go through this uncomfortable period, this flatline period, where we just feel like shit all the time. And it doesn't last long. I mean, depending on how long you've been addicted, it can be anywhere from a few weeks to a few months. Some people could even be a few years. It really depends on you, the individual. But even just getting a taste of this presence and this calmness, you realize, oh, I like being present. I like being calm. I like being in this relaxed state where I can just feel pleasure and feel, arousal, for example. I can feel pleasure from food, for example, and just like feel good from natural things, from natural healthy sources. Just going outside on a bright and sunny day makes me feel good now. And it feels good to feel good in that natural, healthy way. It's like when you start eating real whole foods instead of processed foods, at first it's a little weird, but then your body starts to thank you. You feel really good. You don't feel so bloated. You don't feel so like constipated all the time, or you don't feel gassy, you don't feel like sluggish. You feel good, you feel clean, you feel energized. And it's like, hey, I want to keep eating this food because I want to keep feeling this way. So that's kind of what happens when you do this dopamine detox, but there is that flatline period first. Now, what really keeps you trapped, what really kept me stuck, was not the bad habits themselves. It's the shame and the guilt surrounding the bad habits. Whenever you relapse, whether that's on corn, on weed, alcohol, binge eating, whatever it is that you're trying to quit, whatever your vice is, when you relapse, we have a tendency to beat ourselves up because we're perfectionists. We think that we need to do everything correctly, otherwise it's not going to work, when in reality, there's a bunch of ups and downs. There's always bumps in the road. You're never just going to get a straight shot to success. It's going to be failure, 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 right? But all those failures are learning opportunities. They're lessons. So learning experience, learning experience, learning experience, and then we succeed. Then we figure out what to do because we figured out what not to do through trial and error, through experience. This is life. But we have a tendency to beat ourselves up and fill ourselves with so much guilt and shame. And that makes you feel worse when you're beating yourself up. And then so it's easier for you to go back to the bad habit, go back to the corn, go back to the food, go back to the weed to get rid of that guilt and shame because you just made yourself feel bad about relapsing. So now you're going to escape again, but then you're going to feel more guilt and shame for relapsing again. And then you're going to try and escape from it with that same habit. And you see how it's a vicious negative cycle. So when you're in this withdrawal state, when you're facing these withdrawal symptoms, one of the withdrawal symptoms is that your mind is going to start to play tricks on you. Your mind is going to start to play mental gymnastics and try and gaslight you into getting the thing. Like if you're trying to quit weed, for example, you might be like, nope, I'm good, I'm done. I don't want the weed anymore. It's not helping me anymore. It's not serving me. But then after a day or two, your mind is going to start feeding for it because you're so used to it, right? You've trained your brain to be used to that dopamine hit. And then when it doesn't get what it's used to, it thinks something's wrong. Nothing's wrong. You're making a good decision for yourself, but your brain doesn't know that yet. Your body, your nervous system doesn't know that yet. So you're going to feel anxious. You're going to feel antsy. You're going to feel restless. You're just going to feel straight up uncomfortable. And there's not really much you can do except write it out. You're going to feel like your brain is literally playing tricks on you. Your mind is trying to get you to justify using again. It's going to try and get you to justify that habit. Like, oh, well, if I just do it one time, and if I just do it in this certain way, if I set my intention beforehand, if I only take a lower dose, if I do it earlier in the day, or if I do it like in a social setting with other friends, then maybe it won't be so bad. All these different justifications. And I'm sure you've noticed it if you've tried to quit a bad habit, or if you've tried to quit an addiction, all these mental gymnastics your brain plays with you, trying to get you to go back, trying to get you to relapse, basically because it's not used to this stillness. It's not used to being normally stimulated, right? It feels understimulating. In fact, that's another symptom, is you feel a little down, you feel a little depressed. That's why we say flatline, because you're actually understimulated. Your dopamine spikes have been so high, and then now you're kind of in a crash, and you have to give it time to let it balance out because you're going like this. You're so used to up, down, right? Spike and then crash, and then you spike again to feel better. But in real life, that good feeling I was talking about is you just feeling good all the time, just steady, good, healthy dopamine all the time, right? And that stems from you being in that rest and digest state, being in that parasympathetic nervous system. But it takes time to get back to that when you've always been so stimulated, when that's become your new normal. Stimulation is what we're all used to. We're all used to just being anxious and overstimulated. We're not used to being still and a little bit bored. So that boredom, that quietness, it feels really uncomfortable. That's when the mental gymnastics come in. That's when the big withdrawal symptoms that I notice trying to quit all these habits. So you get to this point where in order to counteract all the mental gymnastics, you try and get more rigid, more restrictive, more dogmatic. For example, guys who do semen retention or guys who do nofap, I've seen some of them talk about, I can't look at any women, I can't interact with any women. They get so rigid about it. And it's like, then it goes back to the yo-yo dieting, right? It becomes too restrictive. And that's when you're more likely to crash and burn and crash out and like binge. And then you just go back to that spike and then that crash, and it makes it even worse because like now it's built up over time, that desire for it, that you didn't transmute in a healthy way to other habits. But by doing all this stuff and trying to logically fight off the mental gymnastics, by trying to logically fight off the cravings, now you're just creating more disturbance, right? You're trying to get rid of these thoughts with more thoughts. It's like trying to smooth out the ripples on water by like washing your hands over it. You're just creating more ripples. You're just creating more disturbance. So in your head, you're just creating more disturbance. You're just fighting fire with fire and just creating a bigger fire and creating more tension inside your head. And in fact, that tension makes it even easier to then go back to the weed, go back to the alcohol, go back to the bad habit that you're trying to quit, because now you're feeling really tense, you're feeling really bad. And again, it's that negative vicious cycle, just like the guilt and the shame. So guilt and shame is one symptom that you're going to notice. The mental gymnastics are another one. And you don't want to fight off these things by logically trying to outthink them. You just acknowledge them. You understand that, hey, I'm going to feel maybe a little uncomfortable. I'm going to feel a little bad, but I'm going to do something else. I'm going to bring my attention somewhere else. I'm going to choose right now in this moment, not even worrying about the rest of the day, not worrying about the rest of the week, not worrying about tomorrow, not worrying about the rest of my life, just today, right now, in this moment. I choose to be clean. I choose to be sober. I'm going to go outside and go for a walk. I'm going to go to the gym and exercise. I'm going to go spend time with a friend. I'm going to go focus on some work, right? I'm going to bring my attention elsewhere. Where your attention goes, your energy flows. So if you're constantly thinking about not doing something, you're constantly thinking about don't smoke weed, don't drink, don't eat that candy, don't watch porn. You're still thinking about doing those things. You're saying don't do it, but you're still having those things in your mind. But if you shift your attention elsewhere, now you leave room for the ripples on the water to just dissipate by itself while you focus on something else. You're not trying to fight it off and create more tension. You're just letting it go, letting it flow out of you, literally, like clouds in the sky. And it's easier said than done, of course. This takes practice. This is why I say it takes time. And there's so many times where you'll relapse instead and you'll just like go backwards. And that's when you can't beat yourself up. You have to avoid the shame and the guilt, because that's just going to set you off into an even deeper cycle. You have to forgive yourself. You have to accept that you're going to feel this discomfort. It's okay. It's normal. It's part of the process, because pretty soon that discomfort goes away. Your brain and your body start to rewire and be like, oh, this is our natural state. This is how we're supposed to be, calm, relaxed, not stimmed out all the time. Another thing is that you start to label the bad habit like, oh, I hate porn, I hate weed, I hate drinking, whatever it is. And then it's like you have such negative emotion towards it. And at first that kind of fuels you, your anger. You're like a Sith Lord, right? You're like using your anger to fuel your motivation to quit. But then after a while, that doesn't really work anymore, because all those strong emotions is just unhealed trauma, right? You still have a lot of trauma associated with you using this substance or abusing this substance. And you need to be able to let that go, because otherwise you're not going to move on. It's like I said, you're still thinking about the thing. You being angry about the thing means you're still thinking about the thing. You know that you're on the path to healing when you realize you become indifferent towards the thing that you're trying to quit. You don't really feel anything about it anymore. You don't really care about it anymore. You don't really think about it anymore. But labeling all these things as good or bad, that's just all in our mind. Our mind creates our reality. That's just how we're perceiving it as good or bad. Like I could sit here and say, weed is so bad for you, but it's neither good nor bad. It just is, right? It's just a negative perception that I might have associated in my mind. But all that negativity in your head, all that anger, it makes you feel claustrophobic after a while. You can't breathe. You can't just flow and be yourself and live your life, because remember, where your attention goes, your energy flows. So all your attention, even though it's negative attention, it's still on the thing. It's still on the thing you're trying to quit. All day you're just thinking about porn, you're thinking about weed. Even though you're thinking about quitting it, you're still thinking about the thing. You're not focused on the life that you actually want to live. You're not focused on being the best version of yourself, because the best version of you, your highest version, isn't even thinking about these things anymore, right? Like I always talk about embody your highest version. What would your highest version do right now? What would they think right now? Then do that and embody that mindset right now as best as you can. Well, your highest version would not be thinking about the things that they don't want to do anymore. They just wouldn't do them. Like for me, I don't think about fast food anymore. I just don't consume it because I don't think it tastes good and it doesn't make me feel good. And I've had enough time off of fast food and on healthy whole foods instead that I understand on a deep level, my body, my brain, my nervous system itself understands that we prefer natural, healthy food. Eventually you retrain the mind and the body. Like I said, after a few weeks, after a few months, you realize, oh, this is who I am. That old version of me that was doing all those things, that was consuming all those substances, that's not me. That was the ego, that was the lower self, that was a false identity. That was a mask I was wearing. That was a mask I was wearing that was pretending to be me. I thought that was me, but that was just a role I was playing. The real me is the version of me that I refer to as my highest self, right? The version of me that's healthy, that's wealthy, that's sexy, that is confident, all these things that we want to be. That version of us exists. We have to choose to live as that version of ourselves. And that means letting go of old habits, letting go of old ways of thinking, letting go of old coping mechanisms when we feel stress. Instead of going for the weed, instead of going for the alcohol, instead of going for the porn, when you feel discomfort, when you feel stress, go for a walk, go for meditation, go for breath work, right? For everyone practicing semen retention, instead of going and watching porn when you feel aroused and just releasing that energy. Try breathing, breath work, literally feel the energy moving up and down your spine, that aroused energy. Learn to just sit with it and be comfortable with it. That's literally how you last longer. Like, there's all these videos about lasting longer stuff. It's mental. It's 99% of it is mental. You just learn to sit with the aroused energy, and you separate arousal and orgasm from ejaculation. Understand that, oh, you can just feel like full body waves of pleasure without, releasing it physically. That's a whole other video. That's like a whole other set of videos. But just as an example, you can practice breath work. You can practice the microcosmic orbit, for example. You can find guided meditations on YouTube for that. I might make my own in the future. But that's one thing you can do. When you feel discomfort because you want to smoke weed, for example, you're so used to smoking weed, you don't have to smoke weed. You know that that's not going to make you feel good. Instead, you could go for a walk, get some fresh air, get some sunlight. You could do some other type of breath work, like the Wim Hof breathing, for example, or breath of fire, all these things that kind of bring in air like really fast into you and just like, you know what I mean? Just like fast breathing. That I found kind of gives you a similar effect, a natural high, if you will. And then you feel calmer, you feel more relaxed, your nervous system's a bit more at peace. All these things can work. You're feeling like you want to eat some junk food or whatever. It's like, okay, let's eat like some fruit. Let's eat some protein first. Let's eat some whole food first, some vegetables. Let's drink some water. And then we'll see if we still want that food or we were just hungry in general. There's so many alternatives. There's so many healthy alternatives we can do. We don't need to keep doing the same habits, living in the same way that we've been living. We can let go. But it's hard, I know. It's like ego death. It's a part of you is literally dying, right? The childhood version of me that was addicted to porn and fast food and all this other stuff, that version of me literally has to die. You know what I mean? The version of me even from a few years ago has to be dead. The version of me that was depressed and like smoking all the time and like not feeling good about himself and bulking up and getting stronger, but also getting fatter and like getting sluggish and unhealthy, that version of me has to die. There's no room for those lower selves, those false identities. Where I'm going, only my best self can survive. Only my highest self can reach that. And I am my best self right now. I am my highest self because I choose that every single day. Right now in this moment, recording this video, I could have not recorded. I could have just skipped this, but I choose to do it because it's who I am. It's what I do. And that only comes over time. At first, it doesn't feel like who you are. It feels like you're forcing yourself to do it. And yeah, you have to use some willpower. But over time, it becomes easy. Over time, it becomes natural. Over time, you don't even think about it. You don't even think about retaining your sexual energy. You don't even think about not smoking or not drinking or not watching porn. You don't even, just like I don't think about not eating fast food. I just don't do it. It's just not even in my reality. And that's the point that you will get to over time. So please just take it one day at a time. Don't stress. Don't worry. Don't beat yourself up. No more shame. No more guilt. You are human. It is natural. You are doing so well. You're doing something that 99% of people don't do. Most people just stay unconscious. They stay stuck in their bad habits. They stay feeling bad physically, mentally, spiritually, and they never know why. They never do anything about it. So the fact that you're even watching this video, doing something about it, means that you want to change, means that you have something important going on in your life, and it means that you are going to accomplish it, right? So thank you all for watching. Hope you all have a blessed day. Continue to push forward, continue to take it one day, one moment at a time, and choose your highest self. Choose to be sober, choose to live clean. I believe in you. I believe in us. And I hope you all have a wonderful day.